Today, on The Current, we're joined by renowned construction industry leader Brian Gallagher. Over his multi decade career, Brian has driven workforce innovation, shaped the leadership culture, and is now helping construction firms understand AI and that big, scary world in a practical, ROI focused way. Today, we'll be unpacking his journey, his strategies, his insights, and all the way up to his new book on AI in construction. So, Brian, great to have you. How's your day been going?
Great day so far. Great to be here with you, Blaze.
Amazing. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time. So, for those of you who maybe do not know you, would you be able to give us just a quick overview and a background and then your role in the construction industry today, please?
Sure. I took a unusual path to the construction industry. I was originally a business major, 1992, graduated college and got into the construction industry, coming in through the sales and marketing side. And then over the years, I've had the opportunity to work with some leading specialty contractors, general contractors, and EPC firms. But throughout that time, working with some amazing companies that experienced significant growth, a lot of growth and change. And today, my role is Vice President of Strategy and Corporate Development for PPC Partners. We are a company that's headquartered outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we're the holding company for several electrical and mechanical contractors, including Peeper Power, MP Systems, Metro Power, Carolina Power, and Peeper Automation, amongst some others.
Wow. So, again, a very interesting way to come into the industry, and we're excited to see your viewpoint and perspective on these things. And I know you've got a lot of value to add for the listeners as well. So, now thinking about you and your personal career growth. So, would you say there's been something in particular that's shaped your approach to leadership when it comes to the construction industry?
Well, I was very fortunate to work with some amazing leaders in companies that were in situations where they were growing, looking at what was next, what was the new industry, the new market. In some cases, growing through acquisition and strategic hires, and through that growth, I've had the opportunity to step in and help out or provide some leadership, some different areas like technology, IT, human resources, recruiting. So for me, the opportunity to work in the industry, part of it was being willing to say yes to different things, being comfortable maybe with being uncomfortable, getting involved in helping lead things that maybe I didn't have a background for or didn't know, but was willing to learn. And eventually, that experience really helped me in my career to move on to more senior roles, where today a lot of my focus is on strategy and growth.
Hmm. So it sounds like it's had to be quite an adaptable person, willing to learn from every avenue and from different people. So if you could perhaps give a bit of advice to people who are beginning in their career as industry or emerging leaders, what perhaps bit of advice would you give them as they begin their journey?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would say, and I do say this, I do have the opportunity to meet a lot of younger folks in the industry, being involved in a couple of programs at the college university level, and also having been in and currently in some roles where I'm mentoring. And I always encourage the emerging leaders in our industry to really be curious, to be curious about their business, about how their business works, and oftentimes folks in our industry, they're focused on the project or what's immediately in front of them. But understanding their projects, what were the drivers for the project? Why did the client spend the money on the project? What's going on in their industry? What's happening with their customers that they want to invest in a project? I think also being curious about the different aspects of a project delivery process. So if you're sitting in a construction company, looking at it from a project management view, understanding all the aspects, all the stakeholders, thinking about the folks that were investing, that we're financing, the folks on the design side, thinking about the end user who's going to be using the facility. So having that curiosity, thinking about things from different vantage points and different perspectives, I really think about that as being really a competitive advantage for a young person in the industry. And as I mentioned too earlier, maybe being uncomfortable, saying yes to new things and trying different things. And I also think a lot about consistency for younger folks. Consistency, showing up, being on time, being prepared, following through, and that for younger folks, that really compounds, and that compounds in helping build the perception that others in the organization have about that person. And it also involves the other folks on a project, how an owner views that person, and how the other folks on the design team, the subcontractors, suppliers really view that person. So that compounding effect really builds a reputation for someone that's younger in their career.
Yeah. So I guess you could say be consistent and be curious. So that's
Consistent and curious, yes.
I like it, the two C's. Thank you very much for sharing that. So now I know one of your passions and one of the books you wrote among the many is about workforce management and the culture and the strategy behind that. So what does a good workforce strategy look like from your perspective?
Well, as far as workforce management and talent development, talent pipeline, I think too often, not just in the construction industry, but for many organizations overall, they think about it as a function. This is someone's function or job, or this is an HR thing, or this is something somebody else has to do. But I really look at talent, the talent pipeline, how you attract, how you develop, and how you retain your talent is really got to be something that companies really develop as a core competency. Because in our business, despite AI and technology and things, at the core of what we do, it is about people. And the more that we can do to attract and develop top talent and retain that talent, the more successful we're going to be as organizations. So when I think about strategy, it's got to be central to what the organization does. It needs to be a strategic priority. It needs to be talked about at planning retreats. There needs to be specific strategies, goals, objectives, and tactics part of business plans. There needs to be accountability to it. And it needs to be something that leaders of organizations in our space need to be willing to invest in because it's an age old challenge. I've seen it my whole career in the industry and others that I've talked to that have a lot more experience than I do. This is something our industry, despite how good we are at building things, we haven't been consistent at developing an effective talent pipeline. And I think we're really seeing more stresses on that. We all know the statistics of the folks that are retiring and leaving the industry. There's not as many people coming in to replace those folks. And then we've also got unprecedented demand happening in many parts of the world in so many industries. So the companies that they think about how they're going to grow, they might talk about, hey, we want to grow in this market. We need to grow revenue by this much, or we're going to expand in this region. The first thing they need to be really asking themselves is, do they have the right people? Do they have enough of the right people? Who are they developing to be ready for that next opportunity? What are they doing to invest in the talent and skill development for their folks? So again, I think the key thing for workforce management is it needs to be something that businesses are very intentional about and they have very clear goals and outcomes. What are they trying to achieve?
Yeah. I guess a people focused business is what ultimately gives you the most results because most businesses are built on people and it's the culture then reflects that and the environment and the work itself. Thank you very much for sharing that. I appreciate that. So now we've been dabbling around the subject as well, but we've mentioned that big scary word of AI. Now you've just recently wrote a new book on AI. Would you be able to give us just a little bit of a synopsis on what that's about and
Sure. So AI obviously has been a key term and phrase just impacting the business world pretty significantly the last few years. And I think it's important. A lot of people think about AI or the birth of AI is really happening when ChatGPT and other things became mainstream. But in reality, AI has been around since the 1950s. And there's been different uses and applications of AI, military applications, research, and business applications. It's just that the use of AI has become mainstream. And candidly, right now, I really believe we're at the starting point of AI. And one of the things that I found myself doing, and I do have the opportunity to participate in a number of trade organizations and groups, and participate at the board level on a few of those. And this is a topic that a lot of my peers are talking about, owners, leaders of companies and organizations, and What I found is that a lot of the folks I was talking to, both casually and informally, but also through formal panels and discussions, were all asking some of the same questions and weren't really sure about the pathway to really understanding how to utilize AI in the business. So my thought process, I do like to write. I wrote a couple articles that got published in some trade journals, and I got some really good feedback on that as some folks reach out to me through LinkedIn and other areas to have some discussions. And what that did is it put a seed in me that, hey, there's a lot of questions out there. I don't necessarily have the answers. I am not a AI expert. I'm not an expert in technology, but what I am good at is strategy and understanding how businesses can look at change, and how they can look at disruptive forces in an industry, and how an organization needs to structure itself to adapt to that change. So that was really the impetus for me for writing the book. And with that, what I did is I started to outline the book. I talked to several people that were peers that were sitting in similar seats to me. And what I asked them is, hey, what is it you're looking for? What are some of the biggest challenges you're facing? Then I looked at some research. I looked at research in the industry, and I looked at research from outside the industry to identify some different trends. So the book that I wrote that's being published here in a couple weeks is called Building Smarter: Harnessing AI for Construction Leaders. And again, it's not a book about AI. It's a book about how to apply strategy to AI. And
Mm,
when I think about AI, I think too often people think of it as it's just another technology, it's another software tool, or they'll say, hey, well, we went through this with BIM. But in reality, it's a lot more than that. This is a transformational business infrastructure that is changing the way that industries operate, the way that companies operate. And I think that is definitely the case in construction. And when I look at my career, there's been a couple really disruptive things that have happened. I'll date myself, but I recall building my first website back in 1994 when the web was still new and we were still trying to figure out the internet. And at that time, websites were simply taking at the time you were taking your brochure and making an electronic version that people could access. And then things evolved and developed through the next 10 to 15 years pretty substantially. And then you look back at the impact that smartphones have had, obviously coming out with the iPhone, and really the beauty of that platform being having the ability for other developers to come in and develop apps and tools that really created or really burst several industries. You think about things like ride sharing and area where you could go and reserve rooms in hotels and all the different models that were built off of that. Those were two certainly disruptive things that happened. And if you look back at those two things, a lot of folks felt, well, the internet, it was the dot-com boom and then it bust. But in reality, if you look at all the projections and things that folks felt were going to happen, they eventually happened, and even happened at a higher and a grander scale than they did at that time. And I think with AI today, I mean, we're just starting to understand the tools, the technology, and how that works. And if you look at the adoption curves of previous technologies and how long it took us to adopt things like electricity and phones and computers and the internet, that cycle is so compressed, where AI has some of the fastest adoption of all technologies that we've experienced, really in history. And I think a lot about, there are things that AI is going to do for the construction industry today, as it looks today, in the future, that we can't even imagine, things that we're not even thinking about. And the fact that the AI is advancing so fast, and I think a lot about like Moore's law as it applies to computers and technology. If you apply some of the same concepts to AI, again, that cycle is compressed, and there's constantly new versions coming out. And I think another key differentiator for AI is just the pure nature of it being self-learning and improving every single time you use it. And that's what I get excited about. That's what's got me excited. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book. The book, in my mind, is something that's somewhat timeless. And I put this in a preface. I realized that by the time someone orders it and it shows up at their door or they download it to their Kindle, the technology is going to advance and change. Well, what I'm attempting to do is bring strategy and business approaches and saying, hey, these are things as a leader, these are the conversations that you need to have. These are the things that you need to think about. These are the ways that you need to look at how your business is going to be disrupted, how things are going to innovate. And thinking about your business, I talk a lot about in the book about if you were starting a business today in the construction industry and you were unburdened by the constraints of what you have, your people, your offices, your resources, and you were building a brand new construction business, how you would build it today, knowing what AI can do, will be a lot different than what you were going to do 5 years ago.
It certainly is an exciting time, and I'm so grateful to speak to someone like yourself who is trying to help people understand this. And I really appreciate as well that you highlight the need for strategy as well. And AI is a tool, isn't it? It's an amazing tool. But at the same time, we know in the construction industry, if you hand anyone a tool without the training behind it, sometimes they make a mess. Now, I know obviously the people have to get the book, and I'll leave a link in the description for people to get that. But could you give just a little bit of practical advice for some people in the construction industry who want to maybe start to implement, not get left behind this ever steepened curve, where they could begin to look into implement AI? What advice would you give to them on practical terms?
Yeah, I think one of the first things I would suggest people do is to research, read, learn, and then try some different technologies. Download all the tools like Chat GPT, Perplexity, Gemini, Grok, all the different tools and try different things. There's some are better at different things than others. Most of us in the industry do use some software as a service providers. Everything from CRM systems to estimating to proposal management, bid management, and even quality and safety. Most of these software companies do have an AI assistance, and I think about Microsoft and their Copilot model, starting to utilize some things there. So a lot of the software companies are developing AI tools or assistants that, and I would encourage them to try some of those. Have conversations with the technology providers, go to conferences and events, learn from others. I think this is an opportune time for us where we're all kind of in the same level at the starting point here, and we can learn from others. So I would recommend. Um, Start an informal peer group, reach out to some folks, just have some conversations, get together for coffee, or if you're separated by an ocean like we are or distance, to schedule a time and weekly, every other week or a monthly, just have a chat. Hey, what are you doing? What are you trying? What are you learning? And really learn from others. So keeping abreast of what's going on in the industry. I definitely think about looking outside the industry, how other segments are utilizing the technologies, and really learning from multiple sources and being open to trying things. And we know that when we try things, not everything's going to work. We might make some mistakes, but we do need to do that with guardrails. Obviously, there are some risks. And when you're taking company information or even personal information and you're putting it in a model, making sure that you've got the right licensing or the right guardrails, and making sure, particularly if you're putting client information and client data out there, oftentimes you're contractually, there's a NDA protection or some other clauses that prohibit you from doing that. So certainly as you're trying things, really understanding what the risks are and making sure you have the proper guardrails in place before you do that.
So I guess the best way to learn is to learn, to consult, to speak to your peers, maybe get some advice of people who have done it or quote unquote people who are leaders in that industry and even outside of your industry, because there's things that you can bring in that will be really helpful. There's some really good advice. Thank you for those practical tips.
Absolutely.
So on the flip side, I don't like to be too negative, but if a company did not begin to look into AI, what do you think is going to happen in the next, well, year, 5, 10 years? What sort of protections do you have? Any ideas about what would happen to these other companies?
Where we're gonna have a really a bifurcation of businesses. There's going to be those that embrace AI and those that don't. And I realize there's a lot of hype out there about AI for sure. And I don't want to be an alarmist, but those that are not embracing AI, they're going to be significantly disrupted. When you think about the efficiencies, the effectiveness, the control over things like safety and quality, and just the reporting, it's going to be a significant gap that develops. And when we go back to the first topic we talked about of people and talent, folks that want to get into the industry, they want to know they're working for a company where they're leveraging technology and they're utilizing AI and tools so that they can focus on the things where they're the strongest or where they can add the most value, not writing reports or chasing things down. They want to know that there's a company that is investing in technology that's going to help provide a future for them and a future that will provide the types of quality opportunities that they're looking to experience. Now, the flip side of that is, folks may fear, well, hey, this company is using AI and eventually they're going to replace my job with AI. And certainly we've read about a lot of the tech companies and others, and looking at some of the projections about the number of white collar jobs that will be replaced over the next coming years. And I think that's going to be real. We're definitely going to see a decline in jobs. But I think a lot about there's going to be different types of jobs. Jobs are going to develop and they're going to evolve, and there's going to be different skill sets. And if you look at all the major disruptions and changes that have happened in history. When a new technology has come into place, something else is displaced. And it means that those people that currently did those jobs, things changed and now they're doing something different. If you just look back to the Industrial Revolution and so many things that happened there, and even some more recent things. If you look at, I remember some discussions when the ATMs became popular and all the perspective that ATMs are going to put all these bankers out of business and all these people are going to lose jobs. But in reality, when there is an innovative or disruptive thing that comes in, jobs are displaced, but that's healthy because it means different jobs are being created. And it does mean that we all need to think about different skill sets, and we need to think about different skill sets for the people that exist in our organizations.
That's very insightful. Thank you very much for that. So, Brian, if you could give one final message to the construction leaders and those who are emerging in the industry, what would you give them?
I would tell them that this is a fun and exciting industry, and the potential for growth and development in this space is limitless. I think a lot of folks, no matter what their interest or passion is, there's a future for them in the industry. If they want to be in a role where they are working on their tools and working in the trades, and that's where they want to make their career, that's a great opportunity because the needs are going to continue to be there. AI will come in and help support that. It might improve some things that they're doing. Those that were looking at other roles in the industry, looking to grow and develop, this is just a fascinating industry. You think about all the things that we touch: roads, bridges, airports, buildings, hospitals, schools, retail, healthcare. We touch everything. There's not an industry, in my opinion, in the world is as critical to society and to life and to business as our industry is. You candidly, I think it's time that our industry gets credit for that. There's a lot of amazing men and women that have really built the world, and we're at a very exciting time. We think about sustainability, technology, and growth. If you're in the industry, there's tremendous potential to choose the path where you have passion, where you have interest, the things you're excited about. And I would encourage folks, find a mentor, find a couple mentors, find folks that can speak into you, can breathe into you, can challenge you, can keep you on task. And I've certainly benefited from having some amazing mentors in my career. And just again, as I said earlier, be curious. Think about the things that you're doing, your reputation kind of compounding. You're thinking about your career, everything you're doing. It's like compound interest. It's building your reputation over time. So I would just encourage folks, hey, this is a great industry. Focus on things that you can do to learn, things that you can do to improve your skill set. Find ways you can bring value to your company. Find ways you can bring value to your employees, ways that you can help develop and grow them. Find more ways you can bring value to your clients. and even the industry overall. I'm a big believer in learning and teaching, sharing information, and that's one of the reasons I like to write and talk to folks like you. Is there's just so many exciting things going on in our industry today.
We can feel the excitement coming through your words. Thank you very much. It is an exciting time to be alive, and especially within the industry. So, Brian, where can people find more about you? Can find more about your latest books? Where can they follow your work? Where's the best place?
Sure. So certainly LinkedIn. I encourage you to reach out to connect with me on LinkedIn. I do publish at least an article once a week, sometimes more than that, and I do share articles that I do get published in trade journals, and also any appearances I may have on podcast or trade shows. And I do have a website, Brian BRIANP Gallagher, GALLAGHER.com. That has information on my previous books and the AI book, which will be released here in a couple weeks. And the next book that I've been working on for actually 19 years, which is called Build What Lasts, and it's a book focused on leadership and development. And so that is slated to publish at the end of each of 2026.
We're looking forward to hearing all about it, and we'll make sure that all of these are included in the show note description so people can check you out. Brian, this has been amazing. I really thank you for your insights and your excitement, and as well, people like you driving the industry forward and making sure that we all make the best use of the technology. So, thank you very much for coming on the current. And this certainly has been a powering conversation that lights the way.
You
Thank
got
you.
it. Thank you.